Chapter 49. London, November 5, 1857, by Charles Dickens. At the 4th anniversary dinner of the warehousemen and clerks' schools, which took place on Thursday evening, Nath, 1857, at the London Tavern, and was very numerously attended, Mr. Charles Dickens occupied the chair. On the subject which had brought the company together, Mr. Dickens spoke as follows. I must now solicit your attention for a few minutes to the cause of your assembling together, the main and real object of this evening's gathering, for I suppose we are all agreed that the motto of these tables is not, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die, but let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we live. It is because a great and good work is to live tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and to live a greater and better life with every succeeding tomorrow, that we eat and drink here at all. Conspicuous on the card of admission to this dinner is the word schools. This set me thinking this morning what are the sorts of schools that I don't like. I found them on consideration to be rather numerous. I don't like to begin with, and to begin as Charity does at home, I don't like the sort of school to which I once went myself, the respected proprietor of which was by far the most ignorant man I have ever had the pleasure to know, one of the worst-tempered men perhaps that ever lived, whose business it was to make as much out of us and put as little into us as possible, and who sold us at a figure which I remember we used to delight to estimate as amounting to exactly 2 4-poundses, 6d, per head. I don't like that sort of school, because I don't see what business the master had to be at the top of it instead of the bottom, and because I never could understand the wholesomeness of the moral preached by the abject appearance and degraded condition of the teachers, who plainly said to us by their looks every day of their lives, boys, never be learned. Whatever you are, above all things be warned from that in time by our sunken cheeks, by our poor pimply noses, by our meager diet, by our acid beer, and by our extraordinary suits of clothes, of which no human being can say whether they are snuff-colored turned black, or black turned snuff-colored, a point upon which we ourselves are perfectly unable to offer any ray of enlightenment. It is so very long since they were undarned and new. I do not like that sort of school, because I have never yet lost my ancient suspicion touching that curious coincidence that the boy with 4 brothers to come always got the prizes. In fact, in short, I do not like that sort of school, which is a pernicious and abominable humbug altogether. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't like that sort of school, a ladies' school, with which the other school used to dance on Wednesdays, where the young ladies, as I look back upon them now, seem to me always to have been in new stays and disgrace, the latter concerning a place of which I know nothing at this day, that bounds Timbuktu on the northeast, and where memory always depicts the youthful enthrallor of my first affection as forever standing against a wall, in a curious machine of wood, which confined her innocent feet in the first dancing position, while those arms, which should have encircled my jacket, those precious arms, I say, were pinioned behind her by an instrument of torture called a backboard, fixed in the manner of a double direction post. Again, I don't like that sort of school, of which we have a notable example in Kent, which was established ages ago by worthy scholars and good men long deceased, whose munificent endowments have been monstrously perverted from their original purpose, and which, in their distorted condition, are struggled for and fought over with the most indecent pertinacity. Again, I don't like that sort of school, and I have seen a great many such in these latter times, where the bright childish imagination is utterly discouraged, and where those bright childish faces, which it is so very good for the wisest among us to remember in after life, when the world is too much with us, early and late, are gloomily and grimly scared out of countenance, where I have never seen among the pupils, whether boys or girls, anything but little parrots and small calculating machines. Again, I don't by any means like schools in leather breeches, and with mortified straw baskets for bonnets, which file along the streets in long melancholy rows under the escort of that surprising British monster, a beadle, whose system of instruction, I am afraid, too often presents that happy union of sound with sense, of which a very remarkable instance is given in a grave report of a trustworthy school inspector, to the effect that a boy in great repute at school for his learning presented on his slate, as one of the 10 commandments, the perplexing prohibition. Thou shalt not commit doldrum. Ladies and gentlemen, I confess, also, that I don't like those schools, even though the instruction given in them be gratuitous, where those sweet little voices, which ought to be heard speaking in very different accents, anathematize by rote any human being who does not hold what is taught there. Lastly, I do not like, and I 999 not like some years ago, cheap distant schools, where neglected children pine from year to year under an amount of neglect, want, and youthful misery far too sad even to be glanced at in this cheerful assembly. And now, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps you will permit me to sketch, in a few words, the sort of school that I do like. It is a school established by the members of an industrious and useful order, which supplies the comforts and graces of life at every familiar turning in the road of our existence. It is a school established by them for the orphan and necessitous children of their own brethren and sisterhood. It is a place giving an education worthy of them, an education by them, invented by them, conducted by them, watched over. It is a place of education where, while the beautiful history of the Christian religion is daily taught, and while the life of that divine teacher who himself took little children on his knees is daily studied, no sectarian 99 will nor narrow human dogma is permitted to darken the face of the clear heaven which they disclose. It is a children's school, which is at the same time no less a children's home, a home not to be confided to the care of cold or ignorant strangers, nor, by the nature of its foundation, in the course of ages to pass into hands that have as much natural right to deal with it as with the peaks of the highest mountains or with the depths of the sea, but to be from generation to generation administered by men living in precisely such homes as those poor children have lost, by men always bent upon making that replacement, such a home as their own dear children might find a happy refuge in if they themselves were taken early away. And I fearlessly ask you, is this a design which has any claim to your sympathy? Is this a sort of school which is deserving of your support? This is the design, this is the school, whose strong and simple claim I have to lay before you tonight. I must particularly entreat you not to suppose that my fancy and unfortunate habit of fiction has anything to do with the picture I have just presented to you. It is sober matter of fact. The warehousemen and clerks' schools, established for the maintaining, clothing, and educating of the orphan and necessitous children of those employed in the wholesale trades and manufactures of the United Kingdom, are in fact what I have just described. These schools for both sexes were originated only 4 years ago. In the first 6 weeks of the undertaking, the young men of themselves, and quite unaided, subscribed the large sum of £3,000. The schools have been opened only 3 years. They have now on their foundation 39 children, and in a few days they will have 6 more, making a total of 45. They have been most munificently assisted by the heads of great mercantile houses, numerously represented, I am happy to say, around me, and they have a funded capital of almost £14,000. This is wonderful progress, but the aim must still be upwards, the motto always Excelsior. You do not need to be told that 45 children can form but a very small proportion of the orphan and necessitous children of those who have been entrusted with the wholesale trades and manufactures of the United Kingdom. You do not require to be informed that the house at New Cross, rented for a small term of years, in which the schools are at present established, can afford but most imperfect accommodation for such a breadth of design. To carry this good work through the 2 remaining degrees of better and best there must be more work, more cooperation, more friends, more money. Then be the friends and give the money. Before I conclude, there is one other feature in these schools which I would commend to your special attention and approval. Their benefits are reserved for the children of subscribers. That is to say, it is an essential principle of the institution that it must help those whose parents have helped them, and that the unfortunate children whose father has been so lax or so criminal as to withhold a subscription so exceedingly small that when divided by weeks it amounts to only 3d weekly, cannot, in justice, be allowed to jostle out and shoulder away the happier children, whose father has had that little forethought, or done that little kindness, which was requisite to secure for them the benefits of the institution. I really cannot believe that there will long be any such defaulting parents. I cannot believe that any of the intelligent young men who are engaged in the wholesale houses will long neglect this obvious, this easy duty. If they suppose that the objects of their love, born or unborn, will never want the benefits of the charity, that may be a fatal and blind mistake. It can never be an excuse, for supposing them to be right in their anticipation, they should do what is asked for the sake of their friends and comrades around them, assured that they will be the happier and the better for the deed. Ladies and gentlemen, this little labor of love of mine is now done. I most heartily wish that I could charm you now not to see me, not to think of me, not to hear me. I most heartily wish that I could make you see in my stead the multitude of innocent and bereaved children who are looking towards these schools, and entreating with uplifted hands to be let in. A very famous advocate once said, in speaking of his fears of failure when he had first to speak in court, being very poor, that he felt his little children tugging at his skirts, and that recovered him. Will you think of the number of little children who are tugging at my skirts, when I ask you, in their names, on their behalf, and in their little persons, and in no strength of my own, to encourage and assist this work? At a later period of the evening, Mr. Dickens proposed the health of the president of the institution, Lord John Russell. He said he should do nothing so superfluous and so unnecessary as to descant upon his lordship's many faithful, long, and great public services, upon the honor and integrity with which he had pursued his straightforward public course through every difficulty, or upon the manly, gallant, and courageous character, which rendered him certain, in the eyes alike of friends and opponents, to rise with every rising occasion, and which, like the seal of Solomon, in the old Arabian story, enclosed in a not very large casket the soul of a giant. In answer to loud cheers, he said he had felt perfectly certain that that would be the response, for in no English assembly that he had ever seen was it necessary to do more than mention the name of Lord John Russell to ensure a manifestation of personal respect and grateful remembrance.